Hi, Andrea Rathborne here from halfbetty. As you may know, halfbetty was created as a space for women to share honest midlife stories, catalysts for transformation grounded in curiosity, listening, inclusivity, and humor. Halfbetty values all voices. And while our focus is on women, men experience similar midlife changes and deserve a space as well. This standalone episode introduces Half George and invites men to connect, share, and build their next chapter with honesty and courage, and always a little bit of humor. We hope you enjoy this conversation, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Now, please enjoy Half George.
Oh, hey, Chris. Welcome to Half George.
Kyle, it's good to be here.
It's great to be here. Are we going to do this?
I've been ready for a long time.
All right, let's get into it.
First Half George. Here we are. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Chris Rathborne, and I've been invited to do this with Kyle and talk about men and men in their midlife.
I'm Kyle. I'm in my midlife. Thanks for the invitation to join Half George and chat about some of the fun stuff that we go through on a day-to-day. I was thinking a lot about why we would do a podcast about men midlife. And I haven't really listened to a lot of other self-help or midlife kind of podcasts. So it's really interesting to me to see where we go and what we get into today.
I agree. And I've listened to the halfbetty podcast, and I've been inspired by the stories and the women. And yeah, it's made me think a lot about my life, where I'm at, and a lot of it's resonated with myself. And I'm excited to chat with you and share some experiences and where we're at and where we're going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So the halfbetty podcast is largely inspired by Betty White. And I know that there's some inspiration behind Half George as well with George Burns.
There is. Well, why don't I give you a little bit of a history on George Burns? I remember George Burns. He was an old man when I was young, but George was born in the 1896 and he lived until 1996. But my first memory of George was, I guess, in the late 70s in a movie called Oh God, where he played God. And I just remember him with his big glasses and his cigar. And I don't remember much about the movie, but I just remember he was a pretty funny guy like Betty White. And doing a bit of research on him, yeah, he was very prolific after 50. And he won an Oscar in 1979 for a movie called The Sunshine Boys, which is another movie I probably need to see. But he was a comedian. He was a dance teacher. He was in vaudeville, which most people don't know because it was like 100 years ago. But vaudeville was kind of the preamble to Hollywood live theater. And I think most people in vaudeville got into Hollywood. And yeah, he stayed active into his 90s.
I could picture him later in his career with a cigar out of his mouth doing a comedy set on Johnny Carson, something probably in the 80s.
Kind of a deep voice. And yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched one section where he was talking about like health. I think he was coming off of like a quadruple bypass or something like that. And there he is on Johnny Carson doing
cigars. That'll do it to you.
Cigars, yeah, still smoking away. Definitely, it was a different time for sure. I think when I look at Georges that could influence, there's one that's a little more current, in George Clooney, who has had a remarkable career in the first chapter of his life, but has done some amazing things since his 50s as well. And I know that he's been through some ups and downs health-wise as well. I think he probably hit a real peak 45 to 50 on his acting career, but he also went through some real mental health challenges because he was dealing with some chronic pain, and he bounced back. And in his 50s, he turned into a director. He won his first Oscars. He'd been nominated before, but also built and sold Casamigos tequila for over $1 billion, I think, in his mid-50s.
That's right, he did.
But for me, it really is this idea that, you know, I'm 48. I'm probably a few years younger than you, but we've had a lot of chances to live up till now. But it's knowing that we have another 30, 40, maybe 50 years on this earth, and there's a lot of fun stuff we can do in that chapter as well.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, when you're in your 30s, you don't think about it. I didn't think about midlife in my 30s or even my 40s. And I think when you hit 50, and I'm 54, almost 55, the reality of your longevity and your lifetime is kind of in your face. And we're in different stages of our lives. My kids are grown and not grown, but they're out of the house, and you've got little kids. So it's different phase of our lives, but in a lot of ways, we're very similar.
Yeah, I feel like you could see into my future a little bit in some ways. You've got daughters, I've got sons. Probably some differences there, definitely as a dad, and different times when it was gnarly and different times when it was really cool. But yeah, my kids are just about to turn 9 and they're twin boys, lots of energy.
Wow.
And it's been probably for me, the most transformative part of my life is probably based around when my kids were born. And I think because I'm in the middle of it right now, I've got 9 years of experiences since they were born. And I can definitely say that the past 9 years were drastically different than the previous 38. So it's been a ton of learning, a ton of focus, and just a complete change in priorities.
100%.
When it comes down to it. I think like marriage lets you be a little less selfish for sure. As a guy, kids make you selfless. They're my number one priority for sure.
Well, they do. They do. They completely change your life, and everything you do is for your kids. And it goes fast. I really don't remember my kids when they were really young. But 9, 10, 11, those were great years. And then before you know it, they're graduating and off to university. And then things really change. But it doesn't, because you're still a father and you're still always there for them. And it's just different because they're not with you all the time. And that's been a big change for me. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit more later. But Well, sticking with the theme of Half Betty, why don't you give me 3 to 5 words that best describe yourself?
Sure, absolutely. I think Half Betty does 5 words. I'll do 4. Let's say 4. Okay.
Let's do 4.
I think the first one that really is a trait of me is inquisitive. I'm a curious guy. I ask a lot of questions. I definitely observe a lot, usually before I chime in. I constantly want to learn more. I think I often joke it keeps me young at work, and it keeps me definitely involved with my kids because I'm always very interested in what's going on in their life and want to find out more about what they're doing and all the tech and games and all the stuff they're involved in and sports. And I feel like if I wasn't curious, it'd be very easy just to stay at the surface, but I always want to dive in further, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Adventurous. I'm a skier, mountain biker, off-roader. I like to try new things, and I hope that I pass that on to my kids as well. And it's one of these things where it can get a little more painful in your 40s to do that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I definitely don't heal as fast as I used to, but I want to keep that adventurous spirit because I think trying new things is the spice of life.
You got to stay in shape more. So, I admire all that. I did a lot of that in my 30s and 40s and had an injury, and I don't really do a lot anymore. And it's, probably my own fault for not pushing through. But I think being active it's amazing. Great for your kids because they'll see that and they want to be outside, and especially kids these days, you got to get them outside.
Totally. And it's too easy for them to sit in front of a screen. We sit in front of screens way too much. And I'm addicted to my phone, and I can see them heading down that path really quick. So I think your point around health is really key because those adventures that we go on, or ski trips or bike rides, they keep me in the gym in between because I can't just go do those anymore as a weekend warrior. I will hurt myself and it takes longer to bounce back. So I spend a lot of extra time keeping active every day. I do at least half an hour every day. And if I didn't do that, it's a prevention piece. But also, I think if I do get injured, it'll help me heal a bit faster. And it lets me know my body's limit before I get myself into a situation where I might want to pretend that I'm 30 again and do something that I probably shouldn't be doing.
No. And again, in your 30s, you don't think about these things. I was never a big exerciser. I played sports, I played soccer, but until I hurt myself, I realized that your body, it catches up to you. If you're not good to your body early, it will catch up to you. I know most of my friends are pretty good in the gym. I'm not so much. I've started to a little bit more, but you just, we never take care of ourselves. We take care of everybody else first. We have to take care of ourselves. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to realize that you have to do it. And I've been a bit stubborn with that, but I admire you for doing that.
It's a balance thing. And I admit, I haven't always been that dedicated. Like the first 4 years of having kids, I definitely wasn't in the gym as much, and I sold my mountain bike, and we didn't go skiing that much for the first 3 years. And I definitely started to feel it. When I got back into riding, I hurt myself pretty quick, and it took 6 months to heal. And so it was a reminder that I can't just step back out there. And I got to say now, after being back at it for a few years, I have Strava, so I can kind of monitor all my fitness stuff. And it's great because I can see am I slower? Am I faster? Am I getting better? And am I staying the same, or am I getting worse? And for me, it's at least being able to know where I'm at and being able to maintain it. And my riding and my skiing is as good as it's ever been, probably, which is great. And so I can do that in my late 40s, which is awesome.
And your 50s and your 60s and your 70s, probably. So you see these people on the ski hill that are in their 80s, and it's pretty amazing. But it's just being outside and being active. And, we live in a place that's not always easy to do all year round.
Totally.
You got to get in the gym.
Agree. 2 more words. I'm patient. I'm definitely the patient side of the relationship. I think it's good to have a bit of yin and yang on the patient side in a relationship because I try not to let myself get too escalated. It probably comes down to that inquisitive nature a little bit. I try and take in more information before I jump at situations, and I try and keep myself a little grounded. I definitely escalate every now and then. Everyone does, for sure.
Sure.
But
Sure.
I try and sway to the patient, empathetic side of the equation as much as I can.
I can relate fully. That's you and I are on the same page there.
Cool. And I think like my wife can get a little more excited about stuff, and that's a good thing. Like, I think you need to have a healthy tension between excitement and calm, or anxiety and confidence. And it can change and it can bounce between and be a little bit fluid depending on the situation. But it's kind of good to have both so you can kind of see the whole gamut of whatever scenario. Because a lot of stuff that we do too, like 48, still don't know. Like, there's still new stuff every day, new experiences and new situations and new arguments and new information every day.
Sure.
So,
and the world we live in is changing. It can be stressful. I feel like it used to be we were in our own little worlds, and now sort of the whole world is around us and it's constantly feeding us stuff, whether it's positive or negative. And lately it's been a bit more negative. And I think if you have a good balance at home with your wife, I think that's really important, and it's a good balance.
Yeah, it definitely helps lay a foundation for sure. And I think the kids see it. Like, so you mentioned there's a bunch of negativity in the world right now, and I don't want to head down that path today, but
no,
kids feel it. They feel it when we're more stressed about stuff. They feel it when we're less stressed and when things are going really smoothly. So as a parent, I don't want my kids to ever be super stressed out because we're stressed out. But at the same time, I don't want to shield them from all the world's ups and downs, because that's how you build a bit of strength and a bit of understanding that not everything is rosy. So it's a real balance we have to find. And I think that's maybe another point around having two people, wife and husband, having different perspectives and bring them together really helps, I think. Helps our kids see that there isn't one way of looking at things sometimes. And sometimes we're totally aligned, and maybe that's a little bit easier for them to digest, but it's not unhealthy to have a couple of perspectives and figure out stuff for themselves.
No, not at all. Ultimately, parents being together is the number one important thing. I'm happy that I'm in a great loving marriage, and my kids have always seen that, and we've always communicated with them very well. And you want to shelter your kids from the outside world sometimes, but I think kids nowadays, even at 9, they know a lot. They see a lot, they hear a lot.
Yeah. And
we didn't have that growing up. We were way more sheltered from the outside world. Part of that makes me sad, but it is what it is. My girls are much more worldly because of the world that they've been, and it's kind of framed who they are now. So, and they're great. They're great girls. So it's done them well.
It kind of shifts us more into like a value driver versus information. Like, they can get all the information they want right now. It's a question away. They can have a chat with ChatGPT and know way more than we know as parents, or they can call us on our crap as well if we're not right on with our answers. And they do. At 9 years old, they do. And I definitely, one of my sons more than the other, but they definitely both have access to more information than we ever did back then. And they see more stuff, and I'm sure they talk about more stuff at school, and we're just one piece of a lot of noise that they get on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that's okay. I'm quite happy to hear an opinion from one of my daughters about something that is intelligent and logical, and sometimes, throws me off a little bit because it's so right and so honest. And I don't ever remember being that way with my parents when I was, at any age really, until maybe I was an adult, but yeah.
My kids went through a phase where they asked questions about everything before they could read. And so it's less, what's this, and more discussions about stuff at a bit of a deeper level. And it makes them a little less reliant on us for that information. But I think our conversations get deeper. At 9 years old, I know that we're having more in-depth conversations than we did at that age, for sure.
And that's incredible. That's truly incredible. And you're making me think back to when my kids were that age. And I think they were kind of always that way from, they weren't born into the technology age. They kind of came into it maybe when your boys were that age. They haven't had their full lives to kind of be molded by information overload, but they've certainly caught up, and it's made them very knowledgeable about everything in the world and things they're interested in and things that we're interested in as a family. So it's great. I
want to get into that a little more. The last word that I have is strategic. I think I used to be a details guy. I used to really, really sweat details, but now I can't get into the details unless I know the bigger picture. And maybe that's just part of growing up at work, and that's part of maturing. And that's part of like being more conscious of the big picture. Like, I think 30s felt pretty invincible, and didn't have other people maybe relying on me as much. And so whether it's at home or at work, I try and zoom out a lot. So that's my 4 words. Do you have 5 words or 3 to 5 words that speak to you?
I do. I think I'm going to use your first one, and I'm a listener and I'm an observer. I always have been. The next thing I'll say is that I think I'm pretty funny, and I like to make people laugh. I try to joke as much as I can, and I like to hear people laugh.
What is life without laughter? Do you have like a core group of friends that you stuck with through the years that you have kind of like constant banter and call each other on their shit?
I do, and I think it's important to talk about, and it's a great question because I do. I have a great group of friends that I've had for a long time, and women and men. In terms of my core friends, a lot of them I've known for 40 and in some cases 50 years. And I have one friend who, I've been friends with for 50 years, and he's really more like a brother. All of them are brothers, but I'm very lucky. I think to have more than one friend is a gift, and I cherish all the times I get to spend with my friends and their wives and their kids. And, I've seen all of their kids grow up, and we've spent so much time together. And not just for me, but I see how it is for my kids and the relationships they've made with my friends' kids. And it is a gift. And I feel very blessed that some great friends that we try and see a lot. If we're talking about mental health, if I didn't have my friends, it could be very different. I mean, your family is your family, but having friends there's nothing else like it.
I totally agree. And those long-term friends, it can stay pretty light most of the time, but when it needs to get into the weeds, it does, and it does quickly and it does effortlessly. And sometimes there's disagreements, but that spiciness makes it actually more valuable. I've got kind of 2 groups. One is more of a high school group that's more like high school and sports, and the other one is more my university friends and some friends that I met like shortly after university. And they're getting up to 40 plus years of friendship, and it's amazing.
There's just a comfort level of being with the people that you love, whether it's your own family or your friends. Okay, so I've only said 1 word, so let's move on. The other thing that really stands out for me is I'm very service oriented. I like to do things for others, and I always have, and more so now. I will do anything for anybody. I love to do dishes and pick people up from the airport. I mean, those are the 2 things that stand out for me. But, whether it's servicing my clients in my job or, my friends or my family, I get great pleasure out of being of service to people, whatever they need. And, the next to that would be, generosity. I mean, part of that I think is connected to service. I mean, you're being generous with your time with asking nothing in return. And that's what makes me happy.
I like that theme as well. It kind of comes along that line of selflessness. Get a lot of joy when I see other people succeed or when you can help other people. And it could be time, it could be sharing knowledge, or it could be financial, but it's definitely a big part of life.
People always think money, and it's great to be generous with money, whatever you can give. And I have a lot of generous friends, and they've taught me to be generous financially when I can be. But I think generosity in your giving of your time and your knowledge is really what I like to consider as generosity.
I like that. That's cool.
You and I are aligned pretty well.
Yeah.
I think we're very much alike, and we've met each other a few times. And what I tell my wife all the time is, we talk about friends, but when you get older, it's hard to make friends. And I've been fortunate to meet a couple people in my later life that have become really good friends. But meeting someone that you want to have a deeper connection with it's not always easy. And I don't know why that is. It's probably history and high school, university, or work. That's where you really get to know people. But meeting somebody cold and then becoming a good friend, that's something that takes a lot of effort. So I can tell that we'd be good friends.
And I'm very interested in this next chapter because some of my friends, they don't live close by. So we don't get to see them that much. I'm interested to see, because I think I'm kind of like you. I've got my core groups, and it is a little tougher to get past surface level outside of it. But again, time does a lot of cool things.
I truly believe that humans have to bond somehow. Yep. I mean, you have to find a moment or a time. And I've always thought that if you could just get in a car with someone and drive for 5 hours, you would be best friends at the end of the road trip. Because you'd be forced to chat. But it's hard to bond with people over a dinner out one night if you just met somebody. I mean, what do you do? What do you work? But you're never going to really get to the core of that person. So you need those bonding times and weekends away. And
that's what golf and chairlifts were made for. So I have a friend whose brother bought a boat, and boats are an expensive investment. They're not an investment. I mean, they're an investment in yourself and lifestyle, but they're not typically a good financial investment. And I think, and I don't want to misquote, but his justification was it was a chance to get closer to his family and a chance to bring friends on, and it was a chance to bond, like exactly what you're saying. And I think his focus was also like his kids were getting older and they were about to go to university, and it was a chance for him in their teens, late teens, and coming back from university to do trips where they can all hang out, they can wake surf, they have an excuse to go up to Lake Country and actually get to spend time together. And it's an expensive way of making that happen, but so is having a cabin, so is doing weekend trips, all this stuff. It's an investment in those relationships, I think.
Yeah, those are the things that I live for. I love those experiences. Working is what we do to pay the bills, but I look forward to spending time with my friends and family mostly.
Life is, we try to live under our means, but we definitely invest in experiences for us and the kids. And we try to say yes to those things as much as possible.
They are the most important. I mean, when you get to be our age, maybe my age, I don't care about stuff anymore. I don't need a new car. I don't need new clothes all the time. I don't care about that stuff anymore. I would much rather spend the money to go somewhere. And doesn't have to be somewhere far away, but it's somewhere that we can just enjoy that time. And then be able to look back at the photos, because you can't look at photos of new shirts and jeans and get super excited a year later.
Totally true. I think it doesn't have to be expensive stuff either. Like we're in a camping phase right now. We do a little bit of off-roading and stuff, so we can go into the bush and get our own space. And some of those weekends are a cooler and some gas, and you find a spot and make some memories.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like a lot of fun.
It is fun. I'm pretty sure my wife would appreciate it more if we rented an RV and did that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I like a comfortable bed too. The days of, sleeping on blow up mattresses that maybe not stay blown up all night are kind of behind me. But maybe in the next phase of life, my wife likes camping. So yeah, maybe that's something that we need to start doing.
Yeah, worth trying.
Too late for the kids, but yeah, I don't think we ever took them camping. Maybe once.
I'm trying to set their baseline at stay alive for a weekend in an uncomfortable bed, so that way everything from there looks up.
Yes. Well, I think that, again, I'm going off the pattern of Half Betty, but let's talk about maybe something that's happened in your life in the last 5 years that has been kind of not so great. I know I've got something.
I think the biggest challenges that we've faced in the past 5 years is just seeing our parents get older. And we've had to have a lot of very real conversations around what that means. On my side, my parents are both still alive, and I know not everyone at our age has that. So I want to make sure that I'm grateful that I see my parents often. And the reality is they're not as active as they were before, and getting to do those weekend trips and those real deeper bonding things are a little bit tougher because of health and because of maybe not the ability to be able to do what they could earlier. But it's also those real conversations around, like, what does it mean financially? And like every time they go for a doctor's appointment, I don't know if they know how much it impacts us, because my dad has a number of health issues, and he's kind of had some for quite a while now. But the past 5 years, I've really noticed that it's more serious stuff, and he's in his mid-80s now. So these are health issues that don't heal anymore. It's a matter of how quickly they get worse. So
yeah, how you manage them, and emotionally, and like you say, time. I mean, time is a big one with parents, because you just don't know how much time you have left, and how much they can see the grandkids and spend time with the grandkids.
Yeah, absolutely. And the grandkids are a really good driver for getting to see them more and really prioritizing it, because we want our kids to have good relationships with their grandparents. And Chris and I are both really conscious of that time. I know my grandparents passed when I was probably like going to university and then right after university. So I had a lot of time with them. My dad had kids when he was in his late 30s, and I had kids in my late 30s. So our generation was pretty tight. But on Chris's side, we got to meet their great-grandparents. They unfortunately passed pretty shortly after the kids were born, but that was a really cool thing, because both of them got to see their great-grandkids. It's probably something that we didn't really think about too much more than 5 years ago. That definitely has been something that we are very conscious of now. And I really value the time that I get to spend with my dad and my mom. And I hope they're around for a lot longer, and we get a lot more time, but we're conscious of it.
And that's a gift too. I think as you get older, to appreciate that is a gift, because I think a lot of us, we don't appreciate time with our parents when we're younger. We just don't. We're busy and our lives are moving fast, and we're in school and we're getting married, and you just, I don't think parents are a priority until you have kids. I know that when I had kids, the grandparents were very involved, and they wanted to be involved, and selfishly, you want to be around them more because you've got more help. I can relate a lot with that, and I think for me, when COVID started in March of 2020, that was enough to throw all of us for a loop. But my dad was sick at that time, and he was essentially dying. And to kind of have to go through that during COVID was really hard. Fortunately, he was at home and he wasn't in a hospital, because that would have been worse. But it was just, it made things a little harder to see him and to be around him. I mean, we did it, and then he passed away just before the end of 2020, and that was really hard. We all knew that he was going to pass at some point, just not right then. And I just think the double whammy of having a parent sick during COVID was really hard. And it took me, I don't think I'm totally over it yet, but the world's kind of moved really fast in the last few years to kind of get through COVID and just, try and get back to normalcy. And it's been almost 5 years, which is hard to believe. But, fortunately, my mom is very healthy. And I see her a lot. I see her as much as I can. She's close by, and I value those visits. And fortunately, she's healthy, and I think she's going to live a long time.
Yeah.
But we just don't know.
Thanks for sharing. I think it's the most traumatic thing. I don't know what I would do if my dad passed. I think there'll be some talking in my future. Honestly, I don't know what I would do if my dad passed away now. And it's good to have these talks beforehand, because, and I don't know you super close, Chris, but in a way, it's almost a good thing to open up a little bit, because I don't know what I would do if my dad passed away, and I can't imagine what you went through. So thanks for sharing. How did you deal with that emotionally? Because we couldn't see our friends for a while there, and it was tough.
I think, if you just talk about COVID and the effects on all of us and the mental health, I would be the first to admit that it really affected me, and it probably still does in some ways. But for me, I worked in an office every day, and I had for most of my career, and I had a routine. I'd go to work every day and saw the people I worked with and went out for lunch. And then in one day, that was it. You weren't allowed to do that anymore. But I think in retrospect, there was some really good things that came out of that, whether it was spending a lot of time with the family. And fortunately, my girls were still at home and going to school. I can't imagine if they were already at university or somewhere. But I think having the family together was number one important. But we're very resilient, and we all pivoted, and we figured out a way to see our friends somehow. Having a parent that was sick with a lung disease, I mean, that was a double whammy, because he really couldn't go out. He couldn't see a lot of people. So, and I don't want to harp on COVID. I think it was just a time in our lives that changed everybody. And for me, I'm still working from home, and I never went back to that normalcy that I had known for so long. And that's like a death too. For a while, I said, oh, it's fine. And now I'm grieving 5 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a forced change of perspective, and everyone changed all at once on how we worked. It kind of chose us for a little bit there. But I think to come back to your dad, I experienced a very similar piece where my dad was immunocompromised. So it was very similar. He was on some drugs that meant that he was in that risk factor. So we had to be very careful about seeing him. It was tough to know that we couldn't see it, but it was also like, it was kind of, for me, the start of a change where I always thought that he would just get better, but we started to realize that there were people that were succumbing to this, and it was a real risk, a real morbid risk. And we never really had to face that head on before.
Was he at home?
He was at home, and my mom's super healthy, so he had her around, and we did what everyone did. We met we would park at the top of the driveway, and the kids would sit in the back of the car, and they were at school, so just starting school. So my parents were rightfully scared to have them anywhere near. So they had to see their grandkids for a year or two. from a distance.
Yeah.
And so that was a very interesting adjustment. I've been through a few things earlier in life where it taught me that talking about these major events is probably one of the best ways to heal. And sometimes, like especially during COVID, it was tougher to talk to people. So like, did you end up doing any therapy, or did you, like when you were spending time with family, were people open to talk about it? Because sometimes people just want comfort in being with their friends and family, but it's the talking, I think, that helps you rewire your brain and remember the good and kind of get closure and all that kind of stuff.
I've certainly been to counseling before. Yeah, I think it gave me the tools to talk about things. I feel very fortunate that my whole family is very open, and I've always been able to talk to my mom about things very open and honestly. And I think it's just gotten better because it had to be. I mean, she's the only one there now. So my dad was a little less. I think he was a little less open with his feelings and communicating certain things, and that's probably where I get maybe my shyness from.
I think that the hardest part is if you're having problems coming out of it. So if you're stuck in a spot where it's mostly having memories and maybe negative and crying, that's when you need to talk even more and be open with other people and maybe get some help.
I think that talking is really important. And I've learned, fortunately, how to share my feelings. And it's hard. It's really hard. My first idea is to not talk about things, but I always find that when I do talk about things to anybody, that it always helps. So I'm much more open to just bringing stuff up, and it always goes in the right way. But there's a lot of people that don't talk about it, and I think in terms of having a parent pass away, I'm okay to process those feelings on my own. And again, I have a family that's pretty supportive. But if I was alone, I think I would go to a dark place. I really do. So I think, again, going back to having great friends and a great wife and a great family that's therapy in itself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think it's cool that you have been to some counseling before. If you have the tools, then you can have the conversations with other people. So if you've seen a good counselor, it can help provide that foundation. I know I use a lot of the tools in the cognitive behavioral therapy kind of breaking the cycle kind of tools and relaxation tools that I probably learned 20 years ago. I'm doing some therapy after a bad car accident, and it's helped me to this day. And it's helped me actually probably be more empathetic to people that have ups and downs versus in my 20s. I wouldn't have even known how far down you can go. I feel like I lived my life a little flatter back then. Peaks were a little bit muffled and the lows are a little muffled. Now I feel more open. I try and let the ups and downs come, but you have to have tools to deal with the downs for sure. And there's lots of causes of downs. It could be work. It could be family health. It could be financial. It could be your kids doing something. Who knows? But every day is a new day, and we take the good with the hard, right?
I agree. Sharing with someone always helps, but you can't share everything. There's some things you have to sort of figure out in your head. Again, whether it's work or financial or relationship or, but yeah, tomorrow is always a fresh perspective, and usually it, you think it through, and it usually works out. Sometimes you got to dig a little deeper, and certainly there's people use other means to cope with those issues. Fortunately, I don't need those things. I don't need to rely on alcohol or drugs to kind of calm any bad day. And I'm too old for that stuff anyways. It just, it doesn't really work for very much anymore.
It's, what, honestly, I think it's worth talking about a little bit, but maybe it's for another time. But alcohol used to be a fairly big part of my social scene, and now for health reasons and for just the impact it has on my body and the length that it takes to recover from having a few drinks, it definitely changes in your late 40s.
It's not worth it. No.
Yeah.
No, it's not worth it. I like to wake up and not have a headache.
That's it. I can't remember the last time I slept in past noon or past 7 or 8 for that matter. And when I was younger, you had that luxury. So you could sleep
7 or 8's good. Wait till you're 55 and it's like 5:30 or 6.
So we kind of talked about some challenging negative scenarios in the past 5 years. Maybe it'd be good to end on some of the change that you've got a positive spin on.
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm going to say work. Knowing I work for a really supportive company has been a real positive, and companies aren't perfect, but I would say that I really lucked out because I didn't know what to do. I mean, you got COVID, your company goes bankrupt, your father's dying. I was dealing with a few things in a short period of time, but
Sure.
I think the gift of landing with a company that really is supportive has been a real gift. I mean, that's the work side. The other positive is I got to spend a lot of time with my kids, and more so than I would have if COVID didn't happen. Because when you think about it, the amount of time you were spending away from home and, they're in school and stuff, but it's those hours in the beginning, at the end of the day that I got to spend with my girls. And my oldest left for school in 2021, and then I got 3 years with my youngest, and I was home. I was home all the time. And that was a real gift to just be home for her in those 3 years, but also I didn't have to travel. I didn't have to do anything else. And so I'm going to go with family first. Let's say that for sure. That was the biggest gift that I always remember coming out of COVID specifically was the amount of time I got to spend with my family.
That's really cool. I'm on the same page there, a little bit of a different timeline. During COVID, I was working for a growth startup in the music technology industry that went fully remote. But then coming out of COVID, I went to a company that was very progressive in bringing people back to the office. And I thought it was great because I started with the company and I got to build those relationships really quick because we were face to face and it was all going really well. But I missed out on family. And I realized after I left that company exactly a year ago, and for the past year, I've been doing a remote startup and doing some product consulting from home. And I've got to see my kids in after school sports. I've got to drop them off at school. I've got to go see their teachers. All the stuff that I wanted to be there before, but there's just no way to make it happen. I was working downtown. So it was basically, I was leaving at 7:00 in the morning and getting home at 6 or 7. And my kids were going to bed at 7:38. So you end up missing so much. I didn't even realize how much I was missing. And then
Tons.
the past year's been
so much.
amazing.
Yeah. So much. Yeah, I think for men mostly, there's a lot of women, but yeah, I think for a lot of men, that's their lives. They don't get to see their family and they're working a lot. And I'm glad I've never really been in that kind of role. So I'm happy for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think that there's a big push to get people back in the office, but I love the hybrid model. I feel like that's going to provide the flexibility, but also bring people in to be accountable face to face and let people schedule a more balanced life. And I think it's a constant battle, balancing family, relationships, work, health, all that kind of stuff. But if you have a bit of flexibility in your work where you're spending the bulk of your life during the day, it makes it a little bit easier to do all that other stuff.
I agree. Wow, we've covered a lot. That was great. I appreciate it. All right, Kyle.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Hello, Krista here from Half Betty. Thanks for joining us today and being so open to listening to something new. If this resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. You can use our website at halfbetty.com or LinkedIn or Instagram. We're excited to share our next episode of Half Betty. See you all there.